In this session, we're going to look at AQA question 3 on paper 1 language, which is the structure question. And we're going to do that using the extract regarding the sniper. Okay, so question 3, the wording of it is always going to be the same, largely, or at least it's going to follow the same format. It's going to tell you that you're going to look at the whole of the source for this question. So actually that's the whole unseen extract you get for paper 1, Explorations in Creative Writing. It's then going to tell you where the extract is taken from, and we'll come on to why that might be important and how you can use that in a moment. But generally you'll be told whether it's from the beginning of a story, the middle of a story, the end of a story, or whether it's a short story in its entirety. Then you get this prompt. How has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader? And what that is it is very definitely a prompt to explore the structure of that question. It may be that actually you don't find this extract particularly interesting as a reader. That's not the point of the question. Look at what it's prompting you to do. It says, okay, I want you to come up with ideas on structure. The writer has included ideas of structure, and how is it meant to engage the reader? So that's the kind of your cue to start looking for structure and the effect of those decisions the writer has made about the structure of it. You then get some bullet points, and these will be the same each time. So it suggests you could write about what the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning, the key thing being focus, how and why the writer changes this focus as the source develops, and then there's any other structural features. And for that interests you, take that as a prompt for that the writer uses. I would make sure that in your mind, if not on your paper, you're adding the kind of rest of the question. Because when it says what the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning, it also wants you to look at and why this is. Okay, what effect does it have? Okay, how and why the writer changes this focus as the source develops, and what effect each change has, and then the effect of each. Okay, so you can actually see that you're not just feature spotting, you're not just getting your list of structural features and listing them, you're always using the word because. You're always trying to say, okay, this has been a deliberate decision taken by the writer. Why is that? The key to this question is why am I learning what I'm learning at the time I'm learning it? What you don't fall into the trap of doing here is just actually saying what the first thing is in the story and then retelling the story. Okay, you've got to always have because in there somewhere. So, in terms of tips for answering this question, follow the bullet points. Start off with your initial focus and why. Then look at your changes in focus and why. And then look at other structural features and why they're there. It can help you to think of it as a film. Picture what's happening. It'll make sure that you really understand what's going on in the extract if you can try and visualise what's going on. The film technique is useful because if you think of a film, if you get a close-up on something, you know that your director wants you to take notice of it. And there's a reason why they want you to take notice of it. It tells you something about the character, or it tells you that an object's going to be important, or it tells you something about the setting where that action's taking place. They've chosen to kind of show you that at that moment. Imagining the action of your extract in that way kind of alerts you to all that zooming in, zooming out, panning, all of that cinematic feel that says, oh, okay, hang on, this is a deserted area, that's going to be important. Or hang on, we've zoomed in on this particular watch. Where's that going to come into play later on in my scene? You can actually get an idea of why the writer is focusing on something at any particular time. We've also said very definitely use because. You can't just put the structural features. You've got to actually say why your attention's being drawn to it, why you're being told that at that moment. And then this key one, learn what counts as a structural feature. Okay, there are lists of these available either from your teacher, from me. Learn those in the same way that you would learn your language analysis points. You don't want to be faffing around when you're trying to write an answer thinking, oh, does that even count as a structural feature? Okay, metaphors and similes don't count. Pathetic fallacy does count. You're talking the language of chronological, linear, flashback, flash forward, the impact of dialogue, internal monologue, the narrative, alternating the focus, cross-cutting, all of those kind of terms are structural features. Go into whatever assessment or the exam really sure about what counts for this question, and then you can start to think about whether it appears here and why it appears here. So then just quickly, the marks in the mark scheme, it's an 8-mark question, and it follows that pattern of the other ones that actually, your first band is looking at simple and limited, your 3 to 4 is some understanding and comment, you get 5 to 6 for clear and relevant, or you get 7 to 8 for detailed and perceptive. And the bullet points that you're being marked against for those skills are just below in blue. So actually, to what extent are you analysing the effect of structural features? So analyse is that because, looking at the effect of something, are you getting the right list of things that you're looking for? Are you choosing a range? Okay, you're not just doing the same thing over and over again. And are you using the right subject terminology? This is all shouting at you, go and learn these structural features and go and kind of really carefully consider the effect of them all. Now, I mentioned before that you were going to be told where something came from in terms of where the extract was taken from its novel or novella or so. And this is important in part because of narrative arc or Freytag's pyramid. Now, if you think of a story, the basic kind of structure of a story follows this kind of journey. Okay, so that is called Freytag's pyramid. It's not really a pyramid, okay? It's not a very good pyramid if it is, but you've got these stages, and at a very basic kind of outline of it, you've got exposition, complication, climax, resolution. Your exposition is kind of the hooks, okay? It is setting up ideas, questions, themes, information about character, all of which that's going to be important, okay? It's raising those questions, it's drawing you in, it's setting the scene. Your complication is going to be some sort of problem, some sort of challenge that's faced as the action starts to develop. Your climax is things coming to a head. And then your resolution is things are sorting out. They're sorted out a bit more. Okay, there is a kind of problem resolved. Now, in this question, you're not going to explain those terms. Take it that your examiner, your reader, is really familiar with Freytag's pyramid, with the idea of a narrative arc. So you don't want to start saying, as this is taken from the start of a novel, this will contain exposition. Exposition is the process of. No, you don't want to do that. If you've got something from the beginning of a novel, you might just want to bear in mind that the purpose of it is going to be that kind of scene setting. So what are we learning about character Y? It's not just going to be that they're the main character if they're talked about, but what particular details are we learning about that main character and why? What does it link into what we find out later on in the extract? If you've got something from the middle of a novel, you can see that there's going to be some sort of problem or challenge, and that might involve building tension. Okay, and again, you're not just going to state that tension's building, you're going to say this builds tension as it reveals that, or as the reader learns that. If it's nearly from the end of a novel, you might have kind of climax or that idea of crescendo or resolution, the idea of things coming to that dramatic flashpoint, the kind of standoff between your hero and your villain, your kind of moment of the challenge is realised. Or you might have this sense of things wrapping up. Just bear those in mind, because it might affect what you're told and when you're told it. And you might want to use those terms, exposition, complication, climax and resolution, just to help you explain the effect that the reader is creating at that moment. Remember, you are not defining those terms in themselves. Okay, so if we're now looking at this extract, if you haven't already read the story, then just take a moment now to pause the video and to read the story to remind yourself of what's going on. As you're doing that, try and visualise what's happening as a film. Okay, so one tip that AQA offer is to say that actually candidates who are looking at level 4 tend to offer an overview of the source's structure before focusing on specific examples. And that's not aiming to tell the whole story, that's aiming to kind of weave in a little bit of subject terminology to appreciate that you know how this story, how this extract is constructed. So have a think, what might you say about our article or our extract so far? Could you come up with a maximum of 1 or 2 sentences with some structural kind of thoughts about where does the text go? Okay, is it chronological? Is it not chronological? Is it largely chronological? Is it a text of 2 parts? You know, is there very clearly a first half and a second half? Where is the kind of movement in that text? Where is the kind of journey, to use a bit of a cliche, in it? Where does it start? Where does it end? Can you come up with that overview before you look at your specific examples? Okay, so this was my attempt at giving an overview, that now I've read it, I think that this text is a largely chronological, and we'll look at the idea that I think there's a bit of a flashback in it at one point, or at least there's a reference to an earlier memory or an earlier event. So it's a largely chronological account of a life-changing incident. It moves from focusing on the sniper's initial thrill to the revelation of his victim's identity. And if I'm looking there for, I suppose, structural focus, I've got this idea of it being chronological. Okay, that is a structural issue. Okay, and it's looking at, okay, so it's running there. it moves from focusing on first thing to focusing on something else. And this idea of revelation, revealing something, is a structural idea. The idea that that information is withheld until a critical moment and then it is revealed. So I know that this overview isn't just telling me the story, it's looking at how it moves through time. It's looking at the initial focus, where the focus ends up, and actually putting in a structural term there. So looking at where it's going, where is our initial focus? So if this was a film, think about where this opening image takes us, okay? So all of a sudden, you've got a zooming in, the initial focus zooms in on the sniper's what? And what does that tell us? If you imagine that close-up, what is that telling us about the sniper at that moment? What is it establishing about the situation and that particular character? Okay. You're looking then at this kind of image. So his right arm was paining him. He's taking aim. His hand is trembling. His lips are pressing together. So what does the focus move to and why? Okay, what is it telling us about that character? What then does the focus move to and why? Okay, what are you watching? Okay, what are you realizing? If this was a film, what is happening on the screen in front of you and why are you being shown it? Okay, then, focus and why. Then, where do we go to? Here, we've gone back to the sniper. Focus change and why. How does this compare with the smile? What are we learning? What are we learning here? What is it focus change and why? Okay. Now it might be that you can't go through and get every single kind of different shot if this was a film. Pick out the ones that you are really keen to emphasise, the ones where you think you've got something to say. Okay, so again, looking at this, focus change and why. So it might be that you decide that you're going to pick something from here. But obviously, the big moment is here. Okay, so that is that moment where, what are you getting in terms of your focus? Work through those, trying to think, why am I being told this particular information? Why am I being shown this particular information? This is a question that gets easier with practice. So really do experiment, think about it, and we can look at what works and why it works. Equally, you can learn what to miss out, what to kind of skip over. Another tip is to see if you can connect the beginning and the end. Okay, so far, all of the papers that AQA have set, there has been something to say about the beginning and the end. So how can you connect the image that you start with at the beginning with the image that you end on, the focus that you start with at the beginning with the focus you end on? Now, it might be that you've got, say, something good to say about your opening focus, 2 focus changes from the middle that you can talk about with the effect, and then something to say about that last very kind of clear zoom in and what that brings to the text. You're then looking for your other structural features. Well, here we don't necessarily have any pathetic fallacy, we don't necessarily have any dialogue. We do maybe have reference to his past. We do have kind of changes in terms of focusing on or introducing the idea of the streets and the kind of violence happening there. Look at whether or not you think there's anything in addition to the focus changes that will work. In itself, actually, the connection between the beginning and the end is a useful other structural feature. Is this text one that you can say is linear? It goes in a line. You start at A, you end at B. Is it one that is cyclical? It circles round, okay? It links in some way the beginning and the end. You can kind of make different arguments, or different people make different arguments for the same text depending on which bit of information they've kind of picked up on. So that idea of any other structural features is kind of important because you're looking to see what's there. It may be that you can look for recurring images or recurring kind of motifs, that idea. One example I like to use is that of a window. Have you got a window appearing all the way through? Don't just pick up on any imagery about windows. See, is this actually linking? You're looking for things that are adding cohesion. You're looking for cohesive devices. Cohesion means sticking together, okay? It sticks things together. Here, we've got the recurring image of guns. Is it worth mentioning, the focus on the guns as something that kind of links the text together? Why? What are those guns being used for? Okay, so make some notes in terms of that and really kind of try and zone in about the effect you're going to talk about. Think film, okay? Have a go at it, see how far you get, and then we can look at it and give you some feedback. Okay, good luck.